My name is Eric Brescia, and running in the 47th District in Arlington. Professionally, I'm an economist, so we've had a little fun these last few years, to say the least. But I've also been working. I was a policy advisor to a congressional campaign last year. We dealt with all kinds of issues, going from the economy to transportation, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. Originally, I grew up in the Northeast. A little kid born in Massachusetts, so moving down here, transplant eventually. I went to college in Rhode Island, Providence College, studied economics and math, and lived here ever since. Well, I've always been involved in the political arena, and I felt that this year and last year and around this time, we have an incredibly pivotal time right now where a lot of challenges are facing us that we haven't been addressing in recent years. We have economic challenges, healthcare, transportation that have more or less been pushed off to the side because of a lot of contentious wedge issues that have dominated our politics in recent years. So I've always been interested in how we actually go about fixing these, and this year there was an open seat in where I'm living. Somebody at the party had approached me, I considered doing it, and I said, yeah, I'm going to run and we can see if we can make a difference this year. Well, the top three issues that I'm running on are essentially to deal with the biggest mess that we're going to have to do this next assembly. We have a massive budget shortfall, estimated between 1.5 and 1.8 billion going into the next assembly, and by the state constitution, we're mandated that we have to close that. And I would like to do that without having to raise taxes, because revenues in the long run have grown plenty fast as they already have. But I don't want to make cuts in infrastructure investments in education and transportation. So a number of measures to be able to do with this. The first one that I'd like to be able to do is be able to privatize and sell off the state-run liquor system, and then auction off private licenses for liquor, just like what we do with beer and wine. And that would give us a chunk of cash to plug the hole while we're going through the recession and revenues are down. We don't have to raise taxes on businesses and families that are already getting hurt, and we don't have to lessen money in infrastructure. So that's the first big area. Two, related to also money and getting our systems working better, I'd like to reform some of the major government programs. One in particular is how we deal with Medicaid and long-term living. We're one of the only few states in the country that doesn't allow Medicaid dollars for assisted living homes, only for nursing homes. Now, assisted living homes are expensive, and we have to be careful how we target this. But there's a significant amount of people in nursing homes currently on Medicaid dollars that could be in assisted living homes. They really don't need that higher level of care, but they're there only because that's their only financial option. I'd like to target and reform the system to move some of those people into assisted living, and we can save a significant amount of money that way, plus it's a higher quality of life. And three, I'm a big proponent of civil liberties and personal freedom, and I think this is an area that our party the Republican Party needs to do a better job extending. I want to promote policies in general that are going to protect the dignity and and civil liberties and civil rights of all individuals, and I don't think that just means economic rights. I think that means social freedoms and civil liberties as well. So I, for one, actually want to repeal or amend the marriage amendment that limits marriage to a man and a woman. If we're going to make any progress, or even just to allow any type of civil liberties, we have to remove that. That's one area that I would like to have a change. I would most definitely do so. Even beyond the whole notion of it being a homosexual couple, I don't think the government should be restricting a private contractual obligation. If a private company wants to offer insurance in general, it should be allowed to do so. Well, transportation is an iffy subject because I don't think there's a silver bullet that solves it. To understand transportation, you kind of have to look at the bigger issue of why we are where we are today. And the bigger problem of why we are here is because we've had significant demographic growth, but the way that we fund transportation has become somewhat antiquated, because what's happened is that our funds are largely driven by gasoline taxes, which over the years, as fuel efficiency has increased, as inflation has continued, there hasn't been enough money now essentially going into the Transportation Trust Fund, and we've spent years not making enough transportation improvements, either mass transit or roads, and we are where we are now. But on the other hand, tax revenues on the long run have grown plenty quickly for the general fund. General fund spending is up over 70% in the last decade, though inflation and population growth combined have only grown 30%. So I think any solution has to have some type of change where we change part of the sources of funding, where there is a shifting of sources from the general fund to the Transportation Trust Fund, not necessarily just take money out, but change the relative amounts, the relative sources of tax revenue. So, for instance, up in Northern Virginia, there talks about either gating revenue by either congestion pricing or changing the gas tax. I'm open to these various things, but any revenue that is increased by these methods has to be offset by a cut in some tax that goes to the general fund. I personally would like to, for instance, if we were to raise the gasoline tax, I would like to cut the sales tax on food and clothing so it's never revenue neutral, but we're shifting more of our revenue into a more needed area, which is transportation. I think the biggest issue right now that we have education, particularly that people are concerned about in the district in Arlington, has more to do with higher education than it does with the grade schools. We're very fortunate to have very good schools in Arlington for the public education. The problem is that we're finding higher education costs expand very quickly and access becomes difficult. In Virginia is a particular problem because it's relative to most states, it's very difficult to get into our state schools as Virginia residents. And one of the reasons why is because we have a very small price differential between out-of-state students coming to our schools and in-state students coming to schools. So it's pretty cheap for out-of-state people coming here. Now, I have no problem with out-of-state people coming here, but I think the priority should be given to people who pay taxes into the system. So, but I don't want to have a hard cap. So what I would like to do is change the relative price of out-of-state and in-state students, so less out-of-state students come, more slots open up for in-state students, and we can slow tuition growth, and at the same time don't have to raise taxes to subsidize the schools anymore either. Essentially giving more access and slowing tuition growth down. Fortunately, as far as states go, Virginia has had a pretty good business-friendly area as far as the regulatory system is. I don't have anything in particular as a broader system. I just think that regulation that does have to exist, that is associated with disclosure, transparency, dealing with neighbor effects, we need to be able to construct them so they're least burdensome. But I think we've done a pretty good job relative to most states in making it a business-friendly environment. We have to continue to do so because when the national economy does recover, a very key thing to see which states are going to benefit are going to be the states that are friendly to business. Well, my district is part of Arlington in Northern Virginia. It's roughly the western border of Clarendon all the way to the Fairfax border in the east to west side. And from north to south, it's roughly Route 66 to Columbia Pike. So it's essentially the western and central third of Arlington. For those who are looking for more information, you can go to my website, which is www.brescia2009.com. Or you can go to the local Republican Party committee website, which is arlingtongop.org, and I have a link off of there, and you can find more information about me. I'm just very excited to be able to be running here, and I think we have an opportunity to engage an electorate that hasn't seen this type of platform in a while, and I think we have an opportunity to make a lot of improvements for Arlington and Virginia.